Khan Shalom Akim. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rawchaa, Qadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of great Millstone who teach on real well, and Shalom to the sincere Akim, spreading his truth and sincerity. Shalom. In this video, I want to go into the Dutch farmer protests. It's something that I actually wanted to go into for a very long time already, but the spirit, really didn't bid me to do so. I also personally was involved with the flags of the protests that these protesters, hung across certain regions in the Netherlands, because the government asked my job if I could remove those things as well. So that's what I did as well in one of the regions that I work. And there I encountered people that was, not so happy with me removing them, because a lot of them was like, "Why do you do this? You can't do this." But then once you get into a conversation with these people that are actually pro-farmer, that are supporting these farmers and the cause that they stand for, if you get into conversation with them and explain them, this is just a job that I have to do. I can't deny the job that I have to do. Especially if it's not against, the directly against the will of Yahawashi. You see, so I was personally involved with, whatever these protesters did to protest against the government and the restrictions and the new laws that these politicians try to put forth. Um, so, Rawchaa, this video is going to be edifying. I have two articles on deck. One is the one I'm going to read through, talk a little bit about, and the other one is to back up the other article with certain numbers, give a better indication of what actually is going on, and how much these farmers actually have to cut and reduce their livestock and etc. So it says Dutch farmer protests show how messy climate action will be a more breaking news. Because quite recently, these farmers did put haystacks on the highways with these tires, as you can see in the picture, um, and that actually made quite a impact on both the politicians, because they was like, you're actually doing something very dangerous. So it caused a certain reaction from the government as well. And these farmers are actually going quite far to make their point, which their point is quite understandable, seeing where they come from. But we as men of the Lord, we need to understand that this is also part of biblical prophecy, which we're going to talk about as well. But to basically already go into it a little bit, this is going into how the protests, we already prophesied to happen, but also how this eventually is going to play a role in the famine that's going to occur upon this earth through the spirit and power of Yahawashi. You see, so we as men of the Lord, we need to understand that this is all part of the prophecies written in the scriptures. See, that we actually should be happy when we see these things. It says a standoff between Dutch farmers and their government is causing havoc in the Netherlands this summer. Protesters have withheld deliveries from grocery stores, smeared manure outside the home of the agriculture minister, and blocked highways with hay bales and tires. So that's how far these protesters are going, man. They're going to the to the home of the minister of agriculture. You see, they're going that far. So they're not regarding the kings, and the princes, man. It says that's what you get when you make people so very angry. Sieta van Kempema, Secretary of the Farmers Defense Force, said July 27th as the group launched a fresh round of demonstrations. So the first scripture I actually want to bring out is 2nd Ezra chapter 9 and verse 1, and it says, He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that this is the very same time when the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. So we're measuring the time diligently in itself by seeing what is happening upon the earth and filtering it through the scriptures. And by doing that, we're able to see the times that we're in. You see, and speaking concerning these protests, and like I often brought out, the year of protest was 2019. That year was even named the year of protest. A lot of protests took place back then, which it's all going hand in hand with the prophecies. Verse 3. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and upbursts of the people in the world, then shalt thou understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning. So when we see that these things are happening, the earthquakes, which are also happening around the four corners of the earth, you can look those up yourself. Um, Look at the earthquakes, Google it. And then you'll see that there are a lot of earthquakes taking place on a daily basis. But it also talks about the upburst of the people in the world, which is referring to these protests and these demonstrations. But by seeing these things, we understand that these things were already foretold to happen, from way before. Because the prophet Ezra, he lived around 500 BCE, which that's, around, 500 to about 2,500 years ago. You see? So it was already spoken about for over 2,000 years ago, you know? So the people might say, yeah, it's just a book, it's an old book, it's outdated. Well, the thing is, these prophecies are coming to pass. These prophecies are popping off. This is Second Ezra chapter 15, and let me start at verse 14, and it says, Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, which woe means destruction, so destruction to the people of the earth. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and the one people shall stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands. Which the sword is representing the modern day sword, which is the gun. So you can reference this towards the wars, the race riots, or the class wars, the actual wars that are taking place, or a time such as the purge, where people have to defend themselves from other people. See, these things are gonna happen, and people are gonna fight against each other. Verse 16, For there shall be sedition among men, invading one another. They should not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. So sedition is going to rise against the government. So what could we read in the Dutch farmers protest article? That they was going to the Minister of Agriculture and smeared his house with manure. So they didn't regard their kings nor princes, man. They're not uh, thinking about these consequences no more that that might stand up towards their actions. You see, they don't give a shit about what they're saying. You see, because they want to make a certain point. You see, they're gonna take measures into their own hands because they see that they often say, man, that if I'm correct, I'm gonna paraphrase it that a dangerous man is a man that has nothing else to lose. So if you take away these things from these farmers, man, their livelihood, they got nothing else to lose, man. So they're willing to go great length to make a point. But all these things also go hand in hand with what these elites wants to happen upon the earth. They want these protests, they want these riots, they want these things to escalate as well. You see. So let me read the first part of the article again, and then I want to go into the meaning of ordo ab cow. So it says a standoff between Dutch farmers and the government is causing havoc in the Netherlands this summer. Protesters have withheld deliveries from grocery stores, smeared manure outside the home of the agriculture minister, and blocked highways with hay bales and tires. You see, so they even went towards these politicians, which these politicians you can see as, kings and princes. It says in like Second Ezra chapter 15 verse 16, because they're the ones in this day and age that have the power to put forth the laws. You see, this is the word ordo apkal. Slakia. And the meaning of that is out of chaos comes order. And like I mentioned, these elites, they want these protests and these protests and these well, basically want these protests to happen. You see, and the reason for that is because if these things go out of control, they're gonna try to establish control by means of the sword. They're gonna try to establish martial law because they see, oh, things cannot be done in a safe way. We need to make sure that it's going to be safe, but we're going to be the ones to put the safety there. Because it says in Second Ezra chapter 15 and verse 17, it says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. This is referring to martial law, and these checkpoints going to be established. You see, and one of the reasons for them to establish that, going to that martial law. Mm, mm, mm. Because there is a certain they changed this up. They changed it up. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna mm, they changed certain things, but there are certain criteria by which martial law can be established, and one of them is when civil forces are overwhelmed, which these civil forces, for instance, are police, um, I say that the fire brigade, for instance, or um, medical personnel, if they're not able to um, uphold the safety because of what's happening, then the government's going to institute martial law because they want, the things to be under control. Let me see, state of emergency. Let me see what it says over here. It says martial law may be declared in cases of major natural disasters. However, da, 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 da. It says a state of emergency is a situation in which a government is empowered to be able to put through policies that it would normally not be permitted to do for the safety and protection of its citizens. A government can declare such a state during a natural disaster, civil unrest, which the civil unrest is going through the protests, armed conflict, medical pandemic or epidemic, or other biosecurity risk. You see, so they can declare a state of emergency once um, these protests, get out of hand. That's what they want. That's how they're able to establish that order out of chaos. That's actually what they want because that's a step closer toward that new world order that they're trying to establish, but which is not going to happen. Thus said the Bible. So let's go back to the article. It says, "What's driving the dispute? Manure. The Netherlands' intensive livestock farming system produces an unusual excess of animal feces. When mixed with urine, these feces give off ammonia and nitrous oxide. The former is a pollutant that can leak into the air and water, harming local wildlife. The latter is a potent greenhouse gas that traps heat in our atmosphere. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says nitrous oxide accounts for around 6% of global greenhouse gas emissions. In June, the Netherlands unveiled a world-leading target to halve emissions of the gases, as well as other nitrogen compounds that come from fertilizers. By 2030, to tackle their environmental and climate impacts, the government said it was leading an unavoidable transition for agriculture. Farmers can reduce the release of nitrogen compounds by changing how they manage their cows, feeding them less protein or using water to dilute manure, for example. But the target is expected to require a 30% reduction over livestock numbers, and experts say many farms will have to shut down. Farmers are demanding that the government rethink the plan before it becomes law later this year. So, what actually is going on is they are blaming the farmers for a lot of nitrogen emission. They say that about 50% of the Dutch nitrogen emission stems from the agricultural region, and especially those that have livestock. Meanwhile, other sectors in the Netherlands um, also produce it. So why are the farmers targeted? You see, and another thing that I actually want to bring out is something that my colleague told me, which is actually like a like a foreman, and he explained me. He said they're trying to target these farmers in the Netherlands, but if these farmers would only produce food that was meant for the Netherlands, then we would not have this problem. Because as we're going to find out as well in this article, a lot of produce that is made, products that are created, because of these farmers, are actually exported. So you have in Holland, you have the the Gouda, the Gouda kaas, the Gouda cheese, which you can buy that also in other countries, man. You can buy that abroad of the Netherlands. Why? Because it's produced over here and then exported to these other countries. You see. So if these farmers would just produce enough for the Netherlands, and would not, have their mind on the exportation to the outside countries, that would also play a major role, man. And these major companies that are actually so big and have so much money to do that are actually a few compared to the rest, you see, which is like I don't want to say monopoly because a monopoly everybody has, you know, the control, like few have control over the rest, but these major players, they're actually the ones that are basically messing up these smaller local farms. See, so those smaller local farms they have to suffer because of what's happening with these big major $1 million companies, farms basically. So here are a couple of statistics or basically numbers. It says Dutch government proposals for tackling nitrogen emissions indicate a radical cut in livestock. They estimate that 11,200 farms will have to close and another 70,600 farmers will have to significantly reduce their livestock, which is quite a large number. I don't know how much farms we have in the Netherlands in total, but that's actually quite a big number. And what's going to happen when these farms are closing and these other farms reduce their livestock? That means less food is going to be produced. How much more, so like how much is going to the, to other countries? How much is being exported? How much will there be for the Netherlands, for the people in Holland themselves? You see? So what kind of impact does that have as well? It means that the production of food is going to be reduced as well, which means that's going to lead up to a famine. Most likely it won't happen, overnight that, it's going to have that big of an impact, but seeing how certain things are revolving upon this earth, how certain things are being done by the Heavenly Father, that eventually creates a domino effect that all of a sudden these storehouses shall be empty. You see? Think about it. It says Trinske Elshoff, a dairy farmer with 250 cows in the northern province of Friesland, says farmers feel blindsided. For decades, governments have encouraged them to increase yields. Meanwhile, other high-polluting industries such as aviation, construction and transport have yet to face such severe environmental rules. We know we have to do something about nitrogen, but not in this top-down way, and not at this speed, she says. It feels like they want to get rid of all the farmers in the Netherlands. See, and like I mentioned already, these things, are all, you know, targeted towards taking away the food. This is Second Esdras chapter 15 and verse 5. Behold, said the Lord Yahawah, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. So these things were already prophesied to happen. The wars would come upon the earth, the famines, which means the lack of bread. A lot of people would die upon this earth, whether it would be by the sword, whether it would be by pestilences, whether it would be by animals. Multiple ways that the Most High can take these people out. And eventually, the destruction that's going to come is the destruction by thermonuclear missiles upon this earth. But these things were prophesied already. So yeah, I understand why they feel that way, because in the way that they're proposing these things towards these farmers, it's almost you know it's like impossible for them to do such things in such a short amount of time. I remember a documentary that I watched on these oil companies, a couple of decades ago, and this one man, I don't remember his name, but he's pretty famous. He's one of these, I believe he's one of these 13 bloodline families. But at a certain moment, he made so much money that he was able to sell the oil underneath the market value, only to be able to uh, uh, hinder his opponents and make sure that they would come at the loss. Because then everybody would buy his oil at a very cheap price, would not buy their oil, they would just sit there with the oil, nothing happens. So these major companies, man, these major farms, they will be able to keep their head above water. But these smaller, man, these small family businesses, these family farms, they won't be able to keep their head above water. See, so I understand why they're feeling that way. You know, but we need to understand this is all part of prophecy. It says the farmer's plight is stirring a thorny debate in climate action with implications well beyond the Netherlands. A wave of solidarity protests have taken place in recent weeks from Germany to Canada. Some have been organized by people who view the measure as an attack on workers, rights, and small businesses. But far right figures and conspiracy theorists have also gotten involved. Twitter is filled with posts linking the Netherlands' nitrogen policy to the Great Reset, which in a way, you know, these people are correct. A theory that claims international elites are trying to use to establish an authoritarian global government, which yeah, all these things are part of that. On July 7th, Fox News' Tucker Carlson featured a guest wrongly claiming the policy is designed to clear land for use by migrants. And at a July 23rd rally, former US President Donald Trump praised the farmers for fighting their government's climate tyranny. This may be just the beginning of much wider global unrest over agriculture. Scientists say dealing with climate change will require not just gradual reform, but a rapid also transformation of the global food system. As one of the world's most densely farmed nations, the Netherlands is one of the first countries to grapple with how that upheaval will impact farmers, and how messy the transition will be. It won't be the last. So there's more information on that. Let me see what it says over here. So let's read this last part. It says, what makes farmers so angry? But for Dutch farmers, that new direction feels unclear. The government announced the target without specifying how the 25 billion will be distributed, or how provinces will decide who gets to keep their cows, or if there will be involuntary buyouts. The uncertainty has helped fuel anger. Elsa says she doesn't know what will happen to her farm if the target becomes law. She might be able to sell 30 cows, but much more than that would make her business untenable. And other farmers, if other farmers in her region sell their farms, Elsa and her husband, both in their 50s, might be able to keep their cows, she says. Otherwise, they may be forced into early retirement. Their son, currently studying at an agricultural high school, is rethinking his lifelong plan to become a farmer. So these people are actually, afraid for the future. They don't have a happy future for what's going on, and then that's also something that's prophesied, in the book of Ecclesiastes, 12th chapter. They don't have a clear and happy future for what's coming. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12, and starting verse 1. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. So our people need to come back to Bahasham Yahawashi, as soon as possible, man. Basically, the younger, the better. Me, myself, and I came to the truth around 24, 25 years old. Another brother, he came in at 20. There might be men and women coming into this truth at a later age, maybe earlier, but the earlier the better, you know. Verse 2. Let me read verse 1 again. Remember now that Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. You see, this is referring to the times that's ahead of us. You see, the time of Jacob's trouble. See, we need to come back to Bahasham Yahawashi, before that time. Otherwise, there's no more way that we can receive access. Verse 2, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. And this is referring to the truth. Because the truth is the light, and the time is gonna come that the Most High is gonna take away this truth from the earth. It's gonna be hidden. It's gonna be only within the minds of the men of the Lord. You see, so our people need to come back before that. Verse 3, in the days when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. And this is referring to the economy, that the economy is going to get worse, and the people are going to be afraid for the future. Work is going to stop, it's going to be less work available. Like I say that. Um, Unemployment. But the point is, for the statement that I made concerning these people having a dire future, it says, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. They don't have a bright future ahead of them. They don't know what's going to happen with basically with their business, the way that they make money. That's also where Isaiah chapter 10 and 1 comes into play. It says, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed. And that's what they're doing, man. The things that they're prescribing, concerning their laws, regulations, restrictions, are unrighteous, man. It's taking away the livelihood of these people. See, hey, I've not done my research concerning the nitrogen and the impact it actually might have on the how you say that, um, I want to say economy, but on the environment. So I cannot make a statement concerning that, but they do write that grievousness which they have prescribed, because with their laws that they're trying to put forth, they're making these people afraid, taking away their livelihood and things like that. So this is the word grievous in the free dictionary. It says grievous, causing fear or anxiety by threatening great harm. And the great harm that eventually happens is that these people have to shut down their farms. They have to reduce the livestock. Their income is going to be reduced. Meanwhile, if you think about it, the livestock that they have is actual riches. Because when we go back to Genesis, the 13th chapter, it says, and Abram, Genesis 13 and 1, and Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and led with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. So the riches that our forefather Abram possessed were not only the silver and the gold that we might esteem as riches in this day and age as well, but also the cattle that he has was esteemed as riches. And what do these farmers have? They have cattle, man. They have cows. They have sheep. They have chicken. Things that are actually worth something because you're able to provide food. A cow, you're able to make cheese. You're able to make milk, butter, the simple things without even having to butcher, and slaughter the animal itself. It's able to make certain things for you. Chicken can lay eggs. Of course, it also provides the meat, but it's actual riches, something that's actually worth something. Not the fiat currency that we have right now, which is going to be taken away very soon. It's going to be exchanged for digital currency. It's going to be put on a chip in your hand or in your forehead. But they have actual riches. And by these laws that they put forth, they make these people anxious, man, and fearful for the future. It says the government sent a mediator to meet with farmers' organization on July 26th in a bid to convince them that the target is workable. But the union said they didn't consider the mediator, a member of Prime Minister Mark Rutte's party, independent. They warned they won't meet with him until the government promises serious discussions on the target and its timeline, suggesting the dispute is likely to continue. And also these prime ministers, these ministers, and those that are in the parliament, these people all, are all Freemasons, man. Well, most likely all of them are Freemasons. So they're all in it, with the same mindset to enforce these plans towards this new world order or the Great Reset. So the Netherlands farmers' protests are probably the largest uprising over environmental regulations of agriculture that the world has seen in the climate action era. But similar tensions have been bubbling elsewhere. Farmers in Spain, Ireland, and New Zealand have all staged demonstrations in their capitals to challenge the green reforms in the last few years. Populists in the US and Europe, including Francis Marine Le Pen, are seizing on the protest to cast climate actions as conflict between rural heartlands, working people, and urban elites. Also, who marched in with the June protest but hasn't joined the more disruptive efforts, says governments and climate advocates hoping to enact environmental reforms need to communicate better and offer more support if they want farmers to make a rapid change. Yeah, basically, there's nothing else there. It says the world now wants us to see ourselves as keepers of the environment and nature, and that's so new, she says. Overhauling a food system on which we all rely is the responsibility of the whole community, not just farmers, she adds. We cannot do this alone. So yeah, we understand why these farmers are angry, because they're taking away their livelihood. This is Sirach chapter 34 and verse 22. He that taketh away his neighbor's living slayed him, and he that defrauded the labor of his hire is a bloodshed. So if they're enforcing these laws upon these farmers and they're not able to meet them and they decide to close it because, hey, what does it say in the uh, second article concerning why Dutch farmers are protesting over emission cuts? It says Dutch government proposals for tackling nitrogen emissions indicate a radical cut in livestock. Estimate 11,000 to 200 farms will have to close, which means these farmers no more job. Their livelihood is taken away. Why? Because of these unrighteous decrees that they put forth. And another 17,600 farmers will have to significantly reduce their livestock. And in the one article, we was able to read that if even if she puts away 30 cows, that's the maximum for her to still be able to make a living. So we understand it, but we also understand that prophecy has to come to pass, and this is all part of prophecy. These protesters, you know, uh, being pro farmers, it's all part of prophecy, and it's all going hand in hand with the order out of chaos that they're also trying to establish. So you know, throwing the tires, on the road, putting these haystacks on fire. We understand you're trying to make a point, but you're all, you know, uh, uh, forwarding their plans as well. Because if these things get out of hand, they're going to try to establish, martial law as well. Not necessarily because of these farmers, but because of the 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 other protests and other reasons that the people have to protest. Gonna happen and occur as well. I'm gonna read Sirach 34 and 22 again, and it says, "He that taketh away his neighbor's living slayeth him." Because you take away his livelihood, or you take away that by which he was able to take care of himself, take care of his wife and his family. You take away the fact that he is able to provide food, shelter, clothing. You take it all away. And he that defrauded the labor of his hire is a bloodshedder. So they're being defrauded of their labor. It's like yeah. So yeah. So Yahawashi, this video was edifying. And with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rawchaa, Qadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone, who teach and rule well, and shalom to the sincere Akim, furnish truth and sincerity. Shalom.